Mark, it's so good to have you.
Great to be here.
This has been a long time in the making, but deeply appreciate all of you coming today. We have a full day planned exploring health, wellness, longevity, human flourishing. We added human flourishing because we wanted to make sure that this conversation is both about lifespan, health span, and also something I like to call presence span. It's a new word that I coined. You're welcome to use it, which is not only like do we want to live long years, we want to have healthy years, but we also want to live present years. We want to live years with a lot of love and a lot of connection and a lot of friendship and a lot of joy. So today, as I see it, is all about that whole human, which includes our heart and includes our mind and our being. And I can't think of anyone better to co-host this with and also to start the day than Mark. So thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for all being here.
I have known Mark for probably 30 years or more.
A few minutes. I'm only 29.
I don't know how that works. And I found him to be what a lot of people don't know about him is actually he's a really deep, caring human being and friend and somebody who is kind of there for you when you need them. And I'm sure I'm one of probably 1,000 people who look for you for advice and support. And so just blessings for the role that you play in the world.
Thank you.
And if there's anybody that I look to who says, like, all right, what's the vision for what a healthy society might look like? I look to Mark because I feel like he's connected to a lot of both the science and the medicine, but he's also connected to the human aspect of life. And so we're going to have a conversation here today to kind of open up this session and kind of welcome you and kind of launch this day. Mark will be back later to do a Q&A, so if you have questions for him, we have a whole section of just Q&A. So know that Q&A will be happening later and that we'll be engaging all kinds of different leaders today from different backgrounds with all of this intention around what actually helps us make longer, happier lives. And again, I couldn't be more thrilled. This was an idea I passed by Mark, I think 6 months ago, and just thrilled that it all came together.
Did, yeah.
So I'm going to stop talking for a minute and I'll ask a question. And the first question is, I know a lot about your life, Mark, but I don't know if everybody else does. So my first question is...
What's my favorite ice cream?
What is your favorite ice cream?
Chunky Monkey.
Chunky Monkey, of course. The second question...
Well, maybe it's actually, I've moved over to Van Leeuwen's Sicilian Pistachio. Might be
is that right?
Close second, yeah.
Is... You were younger, you studied Eastern religion, Eastern philosophy, and you were also a yoga teacher before you went to medical school.
Yeah.
So how did that shift happen from your kind of, I don't know if you call yourself a hippie, but you were kind of into the alternative scene, and then you're like, I know, I'm going to go and spend all these years and all this work in the medical field and get a degree or become an MD. Like, what was that about?
Well, I have a problem, it's called ODD. I'm odd. And I just kind of followed my passion. Actually, was sitting next to Jack Kornfield last night.
Yeah.
And we were just chatting a little bit about Buddhism, and I majored in Buddhism at Cornell, and we're talking about Bob Thurman. And when I was 15, I went to Amherst to visit my sister, who was in college there, and she said, you got to go hear this guy. I'm taking this class. It's unbelievable. And it was Bob Thurman. He was talking about Tibetan Buddhism, and my mind just sort of exploded.
Wow.
And that led me down to start reading Alan Watts and Kerouac and Gary Snyder we were talking about last night, and kind of down this rabbit hole. And I didn't really have a plan. I just followed whatever my curiosity led me to. And it took me deep into the rabbit hole of understanding Buddhism as a phenomenology of the mind and of why we suffer and the nature of healing and love and compassion. And it really kind of was driving me. And then they said, at Cornell, you have to have a major. And I was like, what? And I was like, well, they go, well, you have a lot of Asian studies credits, and you could be, I'm like, okay. And you have to take a language. And I'm like, whoa, gee, okay. So I picked Chinese because I figured 1 billion people spoke Chinese. Yeah. And I just really dove deep into ancient healing systems and Chinese medicine and the medicine Buddha, and it just sort of took me down this sort of rabbit hole. And I actually was going to go to China to study Chinese medicine and learn acupuncture, and I spoke fluent Chinese at the time, could read Chinese, and but I realized I didn't really want to spend my 20s in a fascist dictatorship. So I said, maybe I I became a yoga teacher, but there wasn't really a big career path from Buddhism to anything I could see, and I figured I could be a monk, or maybe I could go into healing, and I decided to try medicine, and I figured if I didn't like it, I would stop, but I applied and I got in, and I just dove deep into the science, and I just was fascinated by the human body, and could never really understand the kind of specialty phenomena in medicine. It never made sense to me. And the body's a whole system. It's a network, and I understood that very early on. I studied, systems theory with Gregory Bateson, and really understood the sort of the complexity of nature, the nature of nature, and just felt really artificial. So I just ended up becoming a family doctor because I wanted to do everything. But I was always focused on nutrition, and actually lived with a guy who was in college in a sort of a group house, with a bunch of hippies, and we cooked Moosewood cookbook and vegetarian food, and basically was kind of my kind of incubator. And he was a PhD student in nutrition, and he was studying the microbiome, and they didn't call it that.
This is way back then.
They didn't call it that. He was basically studying ruminants and fiber and the effect on bacteria and stuff. But he gave me this book called Nutrition Against Disease by Roger Williams, and it just, again, it was one of those moments where it just sort of opened my mind. And so I was always very focused on that, even when I was in medical school. And I was the weird guy who was doing yoga in the back of the class during during the lectures on anatomy. And I then became a family doctor for many years in a small town in a Native American reservation in Idaho. But then I kind of realized I wanted to get back to kind of more integrative, holistic medicine, and at that time Andy Weil was sort of writing a lot of books around spontaneous healing, and so I very much was kind of leaning into that. And that's kind of and then I got this job at Canyon Ranch as the medical director without really asking, and ended up right after I got the job getting very sick with mercury poisoning, and after living in China for a year. And my whole system collapsed, and I got chronic fatigue syndrome, autoimmune disease, my gut broke down, my brain broke down. I really was quite ill for many, many years, and I had to figure it out. And so basically I came upon Jeffrey Bland, and who's a sort of student of Linus Pauling, sort of came up with the framework around functional medicine. And I heard him speak, and I'm like, either this guy's crazy, or he's a genius, and I better figure out which one, because if he's right,
they go together sometimes.
I mean, if he's right, I maybe can get better myself, and two, I could really help my patients. So I just went down that rabbit hole, and it was back when they had cassettes, and I would listen to everything. And if anybody knows Jeff Bland, he's got a condition called cerebral fibrillation with a rapid mandibular response, which for those of you who are not in medicine, means your brain is going very fast and your jaw is going faster. And I kept having to rewind and learn, and like the whole thing just kind of came to me like an epiphany, and understanding the human biology as a network. And Einstein has this beautiful quote. He says, "I'm not interested in the spectrum of this or that element. I'm interested in the thoughts of God. The rest are details." So I feel like for the last 30 plus years, I've had this window into the mind of God and understanding the nature of human biology. And and the way I think about functional medicine, and the way I think about what we're creating with the company that I co-founded, Function, is that we're really creating a map of the laws of nature and the laws of biology. If I said to you, what are the laws of physics, you'd probably go, yeah, okay, there's gravity and thermodynamics and this and that. But if I said, what are the laws of biology, you would go, blah, 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 because we haven't really articulated those in medicine. But they exist just because we haven't articulated them. And I think what functional medicine does, and I think we'll talk a little bit more this afternoon, is it's an approximation of the nature of reality. So it's a way of thinking about the nature of nature and the nature of biology, and what the laws of biology and what the underlying fundamental principles are. And what's really exciting to me, and you'll hear from Eric Burden and others today, that the amazing amount of money is getting poured into longevity science, which is quite new, because it was sort of never looked at before as a field of endeavor. It was very, very much dismissed as something we should even study. We're studying the diseases of aging, but not the process of aging itself as a phenomenon. and as scientists begin to uncover that, as billionaires starting to pour billions of dollars of money into researching it, like Sam Altman and Jeff Bezos and Altos Lab and Calico from Google. I mean, there's just an amazing amount of work going on. The Buck Institute. We're now understanding that a lot of the things that we've kind of uncovered in functional medicine as the nature of nature, they're also discovering as the fundamental things that go wrong as we get age. What are the hallmarks of aging, the hallmarks of health? And so it's sort of super exciting. And so that's kind of how I got into this.
Yeah. And so where are you at on that spectrum? Because I know there's people who are like, I'm going to live to be 200, and I'm going to live to be... And there's
I'm on the spectrum, is that what you're saying?
Well, there's other people who are like, you know what? I just want to live a really quality life and die at like kind of maybe a little bit older than other people, because I know there's all kinds of areas of intentions around kind of the longevity space. How would you describe your...
I mean, I'm not in the don't
approach.
die camp. I think part of the magic of life is that it's short and precious and sacred. And I think, for me, it's not about how many years you live, but how those years are. And and I think the concept of health span is far more important.
Yeah. Can we use, does presence span make any sense to you too?
Presence span?
Well, that it helps.
Oh, presence span?
Presence span.
Yeah,
or
presence
we could say
span.
awareness span.
Yeah.
That you want to live many years, hopefully, and you also want to live healthy years. But like I see people at the gym sometimes, they're healthy, but they're stressed out. I mean, they're just like trying to, like it's like they're like, there's this energy of like, I wouldn't say there's a lot of sometimes gratitude in the gym, for example.
Yeah.
And so we can talk about all of it. And I want to hear your things, but it feels like what you represent to me, anyways, is like there's a health span. And maybe you could say well-being is part of health span.
Yeah.
Right, and presence and appreciation is part of health span.
I mean, the whole point is like to be fully connected, engaged with life in a way that is fulfilling, whether it's being able to do your passion in life, to show up for those who you love and be present with those, to show up for your kids, for your family, for your friends, for yourself. I mean, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
And if you have a very common condition, which I'm sure many of you have, called FLC syndrome, you know what that is? It's when you feel like crap. It's really a more severe version called FLS, but that impedes your ability to show up and to connect and to be present and to work and to be creative and to engage with life. So, at the end of the day, it's not about a narcissistic pursuit of wellness and health and longevity. It's really about how do we show up in the world in a different way that actually makes the world a little bit better. And so the health span problem is a huge problem because in America, we're a very sick nation. We're basically exporting our main product, which is disease, around the world. We basically created the worst diet in history and exporting it to every country on the planet. Yeah. and it's a real crisis. And so the health span for the average American is the last 20% of their life is not in good health. So their health span, maybe 80% of their life, and the last 20% is in poor health. And sometimes it's even more than that. We're seeing now 51% of kids with a chronic disease, whether it's ADD or obesity or allergies or depression. I mean, 20% of kids are on antidepressants, 10% of kids are on ADD medication. We've got 40% kids obese. So we're even heading in a worse direction than we were. And I think that for me, health span is really the framework. And, I believe that each of us could, in this room, given what we know now with the science, could easily reach 100 healthy years. If we apply the basic foundational principles of how to create a healthy human, which is not something we learn in medical school. And that's really what functional medicine for me is. It's the science of creating health. It's not about treating disease. I don't really treat disease. I remove the impediments to health. I add in the ingredients for health. The body's got this incredible intelligence and this capacity for repair, renewal, regeneration that we kind of layer on with and impede with all the things that we're burdened with, whether it's our toxic diet, environmental toxins, stress, lack of sleep, just social stresses. I mean, it's a tough minute to be alive.
Yeah. And so you've, I don't know, thousands of patients you've worked with. You're up on all the latest research. What are like one to two things you could say, all right, based on everything I know, here's kind of where it's at. Here's what often is the impediment to that more healthy life? Or is it a list of 10 things? Is there,
It's
is there
not
one
that
or
hard.
two
I
that
mean,
you see?
I get paid a lot of money to tell people to just eat real food. I don't really get it. Get 8 hours sleep, move your
Right.
body, learn how to meditate or do yoga. I mean, breathe. I mean, it's so foundational, and
Right.
and yet none of us learn that. I mean, the things that are most important to have a successful, happy life, we do not learn.
Yeah.
How to have healthy relationships, how to take care of your body, and how to manage your money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, nobody has the instruction manual for their body. And so what I try to provide for people is based on our current science. What is the operating manual? How do you feed yourself? How do you take care of yourself from a fitness perspective? How do you navigate, the sympathetic, parasympathetic, kind of overload that we have? How do you navigate sleep? How do you optimize your health by reducing your exposure to environmental toxins, your nutritional status? And it, with function, it's quite amazing. I'll share some of the data later, but we're seeing this is a health forward population. We have 80,000 members, almost 100,000 members now, I think. And we've got, tens of millions of data points. And it's been shocking to me to see the level of illness, even in a health forward population. I was talking to a friend of mine who did her functional labs, and she's 35 years old. She's not overweight. She eats healthy. She exercises. But she's got zinc deficiency and vitamin D deficiency and iron deficiency, and she's got autoimmune thyroid disease, and and I'm like, wow, this is not the average person living in a community that doesn't have access to healthy food. This is just and I'm like, wow, we are really in trouble.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there's probably lots of environmental toxins that maybe were not here 5 or 10 years ago. There's probably a lot of stress that we have today that we don't even realize it just because of the constant on culture.
Yeah.
So it does feel like it's a kind of a challenging time to be alive in that sense, in terms of the pace at which we live in our life. And so I want to get into function in a moment, which I'm super excited about. I'm an investor. I'm a client. I did it recently. I think it's a new chapter of what medicine can be. And before we jump into there's one other question I wanted to ask you, which is, I know you've been speaking to Congress more, and you've been more of an advocate for how we change our healthcare system and our nutrition system at large. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about kind of what motivated you in that direction and what you feel like your role is in our world today that's of best service, and how do we begin to shift that conversation around feeding our kids basically junk food and hoping they're well, versus being much more thoughtful about the food whether they're particularly in poor communities and in schools where there's just not been a lot of thought or care.
Yeah.
And kind of what do you feel like your message in that community is, and what are you trying to do through your nonprofit and other areas?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've always, my mother always said to me when I came home from school, not what did you learn in school today, but what questions did you ask? And so for me, why has always been like the centerpiece of my thinking. Why is this happening? What's going on here? And I always say functional medicine is the medicine of why. And as I began to look upstream for the root causes, some people call it root cause medicine, I would see patients in my office with all these chronic illnesses, whether it's autoimmune diseases or metabolic diseases like diabetes or, mental illness, and just the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And I was like, why are they so sick? And I could go, it's because they're eating this or because they have this toxin. I'm like, okay, well, why are they eating this? Well, it's our food system. Well, why do we have our food system? Well, our food policies. Well, why do we have our food policies? Because it's the food industry that's driving these policies. And I began to kind of go down that rabbit hole, and I realized I couldn't cure diabetes in my office. It was cured on the farm and in the grocery store, in the kitchen, and that's really what I recognized. It was kind of this fruitless enterprise that just sort of trying to bail a boat with a bunch of holes in it rather than fixing the holes. Yeah. And so I realized if I was going to be a good doctor, that I couldn't just treat patients in my office, that I really had to address why they were sick in the first place. And so I, stupidly just decided to do this. And I wrote a book called Food Fix, which came out at a great time, March 2020. Great timing. But we started a nonprofit, and I, raised millions of dollars to create advocacy, education, and legislation in Washington. And it's been quite an interesting journey because, I met with Sam Cass, who worked in the Obama administration early on, and he said, Mark, when I was there, not a single person came from, the white hat side in terms of like trying to make positive impact and progress. It's all the food industry, the ag industry. They come with their studies, they come with their policy, with their regulations written. They kind of give it to the senators and congressmen in the White House. And I literally been in rooms where senators and congressmen go, well, can you write the legislation for me? I'm like, what? Like, how does this process work?
Yeah.
And it's been a huge education for me to understand that most of what's happening in Washington is, while there's good people there, they're just overwhelmed. They don't have education about this. They're not hearing the right information. They're hearing actually with a lot of misinformation from the food industry. And so I decided to really to try to make a change. And so we've had a lot of successes. We're probably going to have medically tailored meals bills, or nutrition education in medical schools, front-end package labeling, balancing dietary guidelines. We've got part of the $20 billion effort for regenerative agriculture in the IRA bill. We're working on a lot of stuff on regenerative agriculture and crop support for regenerative farmers. Working on the SNAP reform. So there's all kinds of things we're doing that kind of have to deal with the
First, thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate the work to battle those larger interests.
I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm Don Quixote, just screaming at windmills, but I feel like you look at change, it happens over time, right? Abolition took 100 years, to get into slavery. Civil rights took another 100 years, right, till we got civil rights. Women's suffrage took, decades and decades. Women's rights, gay rights, all that stuff. It just takes a lot of time, and a lot of it comes from just, constant efforts and push to do something. I mean, we saw that with, for example, with abortion. I mean, and it's a touchy subject, but the reason we have that Roe v. Wade overturned was not an accident. It was a very deliberate, steady, decades-long campaign by an organized group of people to put enormous pressure on policymakers and to install judges to do this. So it was not an accident. So I think whatever change happens, it doesn't start in Congress, it ends in Congress. And so we've seen like a lot of movement now, with grassroots movement. We're seeing this whole conversation about chronic disease in the presidential campaign that I've never seen in my entire lifetime, which is exciting to me, even though it's maybe coming from somebody I don't particularly like. I mean, I think there's an opportunity to really elevate this conversation. So I'm just it's great because the Washington Post called me yesterday and they're like, we want to do an article about this and let's talk about it almost. So I think
there's open doors.
It's like starting to kind of happen, and
that's beautiful.
so I just keep at it. Hopefully in my lifetime I'm going to learn enough about longevity to keep going to get those policies passed.
Well, I think purpose is a big part of longevity. So it sounds like if that's your purpose, you've got a strong goal to.
I mean, I guess if I would say what is my purpose in life, it's to end needless suffering for millions of people who we have solutions for that they're not getting.
Beautiful, thank you.
And I think it just breaks my heart when I see it because I get it every day, and that's why I co-founded Function. I'm going to be 65 in a few weeks, and I have a startup.
And you don't need a startup.
I don't really need it. I could be like riding my bike in Maui, which was what I did during COVID. But
this is what's here.
Yeah, and I feel more energized and more focused and more creative and more excited than I've ever felt, because I feel like now I have the potential to take, what's been sort of on the very margins of medicine and healthcare and actually bring it into, wide-scale adoption across sectors that disintermediate healthcare. Because they're ossified institutions. Our healthcare system, in terms of our education of students. My daughter's in medical school now. She's learning nothing about insulin resistance, nothing about nutrition, nothing about the microbiome, nothing about environmental toxins, which are nothing about mitochondria, nothing about the things that actually she has to learn about in order to take care of the patients who are sick today. And it's like shocking to me. And so, for me, if I can help sort of shift that change with Function from the outside, it's going to force change on the inside. Change never happens from the inside. Right. So, we've seen this over and over again. And, whether it's the music industry be disrupted by Spotify and iTunes, or television being disrupted by streaming services.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things that happen that are not coming from the inside.
Yeah.
So I've tried on the inside. I was at Cleveland Clinic for 10 years doing that. And we made progress, but it's like, it's like snail's pace. And I'm like, I'm 65, hopefully I'll live another 40, 50, 60 years maybe, but, I only want to do it if I can still, ride my bike and make love, and as long as that's going, I'm fine.
So let's walk people through function, shall we? I know we have some slides that kind of better describe, so let's go there if we can.
So has anybody heard of function here? All right, look at you go. Okay, so essentially this is kind of nuts, actually. We just started, on the beach in Maui during COVID. My friend Jonathan and I were just chatting about, different ideas, and he's like, I got this idea, and I'm like, that's a great idea. So we co-founded this, and now we have 5 co-founders, and we started with a few people, and now we've are the fastest growing healthcare company. We are started in April 23, and now we have over almost 100,000 members. We have over 300,000 people on the wait list. I'll give you a code. You can jump the wait list if you want. It's Wisdom 100.
Awesome.
For those of you listening online, you get to use it too. And the offering is essentially starting with a set of lab tests that are much deeper, probably 5 times what you'd get with your traditional checkup, looking at everything from your metabolic health to cardiovascular biomarkers to immune health to nutritional status to hormones to toxin levels. And really what I've learned over the last 40 years of practicing functional medicine, what are the things that are really problematic for people and what are the people are missing? Like this woman I was mentioning just earlier, none of those tests would have been done on a regular checkup, and her quote TSH or thyroid level was quote normal, although it's sort of at the higher end of normal, and she had thyroid antibodies, so she had an autoimmune thyroid disease that would never have been picked up, and she could have gone on suffering for years and years. So the purpose is to really help people to have access to their own data, to own their own data, to be the CEO of their own health, to not have to go through insurance or a doctor, although there's doctors that are ordering this that are part of our team, but they don't have to get the doctor to order, I want a vitamin D level, or I want you to check my mercury, or I want you to check my insulin level, because they're not going to do it, most likely. And so we've seen this grow organically. We really haven't done any real marketing yet. We haven't. It's sort of been word of mouth, and I'm the marketing. So, but that's it, really. And it just speaks to this idea, this kind of thing where when you hear that 1,000 songs in your pocket and everybody wanted an iPod. This is like 1,000 doctors in your pocket. And ultimately 1,000 lab tests in your pocket. And we need it because we're a sick population, as I mentioned, and we're not getting better. And the stats are staggering. Went from 1.3 trillion to 4.9 trillion dollars in healthcare costs from 2000. We've gone, every single disease has increased. Heart disease by 50, 67%, cancer by 100%, autoimmune disease by 100%, digestive disorders 100%, autoimmune diseases by over 100%, mental health issues by a few 100%. I mean, it just autism by 1,000%. So we're seeing escalating diseases, and the pharmaceutical use across all these diseases has gone up even orders of magnitude more. So let's say, cardiovascular has gone up 100%. Well, cardiovascular drugs use has gone up 300%. And so we're doing more and more. We're getting less and less. We're 40th in life expectancy. We have 6 out of 10 Americans with a chronic disease. We have, as I mentioned, 51% of kids with some kind of chronic illness. We're 93.2% of us are metabolic and healthy. 75% overweight. We're spending more and more money. We're getting less and less. And so something's broken. And we can't just doing the same thing and expect a different result. And so function is really about helping people start to integrate a number of things that are happening that were never possible before. Like Uber was only possible when we had maps and we had payment systems and we had location, all this stuff. So that's sort of where we're at with function, which is this moment where there's a convergence of all these trends. One is understanding network biology or functional medicine or systems medicine or whatever, understanding the complexity. And you're going to hear about this numeric burden, whether it's understanding your microbiome, metabolome, the transcriptome, proteome, all your biomarkers, your wearables, your imaging. I mean, there's just literally petabytes of data. I don't even know what a petabyte is, but it sounds good.
A lot.
It's a lot. I don't know, terabyte, petabyte, megabazillion a byte. I mean, your microbiome alone has 100,000, I think, terabytes of data. That's a lot. I don't even know what a terabyte is, but it's a lot. And so what do you do with all that information? The complexity is so huge, but the body's a network, and we have to understand it. So there's that understanding of the revolution and the paradigm shift in science and medicine to look at the body as a system, systems medicine, network medicine, whatever you want to call it. Second is the advent of the omics revolution, where we're able to sort of really dive deep into so much data that we never had before. You might, instead of doing 20 or 30 blood tests or 110 with the initial biomarker panel, we'll be doing metabolomic profiles with 6,000 biomarkers.
Wow.
And we never were able to make sense of that because which doctor can look at 6,000 biomarkers and make sense of it?
Yeah.
Nobody, right? So then we have the ability of big data analytics. We have also the wearable revolution, so imaging revolution. All that data is going to be able to be sorted, and then on top of that, you layer on ML and AI, and all of a sudden, you've got a very different framework for how we think about health, how we identify what's going on with your health, where you are in the transition from wellness to illness. Leroy Hood talks about the age of scientific wellness, which is this really interesting concept of what is scientific wellness? How do you define it? What does it mean? How do you measure it? And so if you said, Doc, can you measure how healthy I am? Well, no. I mean, I can tell you if you're sick, and I can't measure your health, but we can, and we should. And that's what the goal of function is about. And so function is really at the intersection of all these convergent trends of systems medicine, the omics revolution, wearables, big data, and AI, and all that then is being translated into a model where we're actually able to help people use their data, learn about their data, have longitudinal data about themselves over time, not have this lab in this hospital or this doctor's office and that lab and that one. And I mean, if you ever try to get your medical records and share it with anybody, and then the doctor has to think it's chartomegaly, which is like you get a chart like this, and so it's just analog. Medicine is so analog. And we're at this moment where it's going to shift, and I'm very excited about it. And so what we're finding is enormous amounts of problems with people. This is lipid particle size. So we're working with Quest, and I'll tell you about the experience of how you go through it. But we're measuring things that don't get measured, that matter. And we do things in medicine the old way because that's what we do, and it takes decades for things to change. Sometimes 20 years, 50 years, between the time it gets discovered and the time it gets implemented. So Ron Krauss, who's from Oakland here, was a lipid biologist. 50 years ago, he discovered that what was far more important than your cholesterol numbers that you get on a regular checkup are the quality of your cholesterol. What's the size of the particles? What's the number of particles? And that is far more predictive of your risk of heart disease than checking your cholesterol. In fact, you might miss a lot when you check your regular cholesterol. So I asked the partners at Quest that we have, I said, what % of your cholesterol tests that you get are for the lipid protein fractionation, which is looking at particle size and number? He said, less than 1%. So here we are, where this discovery was made 50 years ago around the block here. It's well accepted in the scientific literature, and yet I'm sure very few of your doctors, if any, have ordered this on you, but it is the most important thing you need to know about your cardiovascular risk. And we're seeing 92% of people with elevated particle numbers, 96% with too many small particles, which are dangerous. ApoB is probably the most important biomarker for cardiac risk. Probably, how many people have had, if you haven't done function, have had your ApoB checked? A few of you, good. Okay, but most of you should have this done. It's critical. And 53% have high ApoB, lipoprotein(a), a genetic biomarker. Again, not something you get in your regular checkup. And we're able to do like $15,000 worth of lab testing for $499 a year because we've been able to sort of work to get the prices down. And the problem with medicine is like the problem is like I had surgery for my back this summer, and I wanted to get hyperbaric oxygen after surgery for wound healing, and I was in Santa Fe, and I was like, call the hospital. They say, oh yeah, you can do it. It's $5,000 a session. I'm like, jeez, okay. Can I talk to the medical director, please? And so I called him. I said, what's up with this? He said, yeah, well, that's the insurance price, but if you pay cash, it's $175. And that's how medicine is. And it's like, imagine going to one lot and buying a Toyota for $10,000, another lot it's $100,000, another lot it's $1 million. That's how the pricing works in medicine. So there's so much, lack of transparency. We're also seeing enormous amounts of, inflammation in the population. I don't know if this is a post-COVID phenomena, but we're seeing, 42% with high CRPs, 33% with a positive autoimmune antibody, 12.5% with autoimmune thyroid disease. We're seeing 67% have some nutritional deficiency. This is, B vitamins, B12, vitamin D, iron. And this is not at the level that I would think is optimal, right? Vitamin D, I think, should be over 50. There's lab reference ranges 30. So this is even at the reference ranges for the lab, we're seeing these massive nutritional deficiencies. So the question is like, how do you start to use this data for yourself? And how do you sort of get empowered to own your own health? My friend Chris Carr said when she got cancer, she has to start a new company called Save My Ass Technologies, Inc., because she wasn't going to abdicate her healthcare to the healthcare system. And I encourage you, if you're sick and you need to go to the hospital, or you have need surgery, or you have a heart attack, great, go to the hospital, get healthcare. That's what we're good at. My daughter's in medical school now, and she's so disgusted with it all. She wants to be an orthopedic surgeon because she can actually do something and it's fixable, and you got something you can fix it. You need a hip, great. You need a hip, someone can walk. But the rest of medicine is pretty messy. So the goal is to help people be empowered to live 100 healthy years, to track your data over time, to take advantage of all the data that we're able to capture. So it's not just 110 biomarkers. We're going to be getting your full genetics, your metabolome, your microbiome, looking at also environmental toxins in a deeper way, imaging, so full imaging, whether it's full body MRIs or AI heart scans or body composition scans or other imaging, all the wearable data, all your medical records, all your medical history. So you have like kind of what I'm calling medical intelligence, which is this concept that is really, I think, emerging, which is the N of one data about you is how you have to navigate your health. It's not based on this concept of evidence-based medicine, which is sort of generalized for populations, but isn't specific for you. So when you look at a randomized controlled trial, it's adaptable to people who match exactly that profile. If you're a 70-kilogram white male from Kansas, okay, but if you're like anybody else, it may not actually be relevant for you as much. Or on a population study, it doesn't prove cause and effect, so you can maybe see trends. So the N of one data, which is essentially what we're creating, is your own database of your health over time, and empowering you to learn from it. It's not just the data, right? We're drawing on all the scientific literature. I call this top-down, bottom-up, inside-out medicine, which is top-down, which is all the scientific literature, and stratified by quality. It's not like, the American Beverage Association is funding a study on soda. We're kind of not going to include that, right? But and then the bottom-up is all the patient data, patient story, patient results, outcomes, and the inside-out is knowledge experts. So it's not just like sort of random. It's okay. What do knowledge experts say about what you should do about X, Y, or Z problem? So that's the idea of 1,000 doctors in your pocket, and wherever you are on the planet, you'll be able to sort of access this. Sort of like think of like function chat. Like where you're able to interrogate your own biology in a way that helps you learn what's going on. And we're going to create insights and learnings that are so much more than we understand now.
And the AI will help you
100%.
process that. Yeah.
Look at the patterns and guide you, and it's going to be an interactive, dynamic experience. And it's pretty easy to sign up. I mean, you just go to the website and sign up. You can use the code Wisdom100 and bypass the wait list. It takes about 5 minutes to sign up. You get tell them where your zip code is. Essentially, they say, yeah, there's a Quest lab. It's 2 blocks from you or a mile from you, and your appointment time's at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock on Thursday. You go in, it's 15 minutes in and out, and then your results get all loaded up in your dashboard.
It seemed to move right to the front of the line, too, at Quest, I noticed.
Yeah, you don't have to wait for the 300,000 people to get in.
Yeah.
So, and then you get all the insights. So it's really quite deep about your dashboard, about what it means, and your action plan. It's very personalized. It synthesizes the data, and then tells you what you probably should be eating and what supplements you might need, and when you need to go get further medical care, whether tests and diagnostics you might need. So it guides you in a really dynamic way, and we're building a dynamic interactive app. So it's like we're like literally just a little bit over a year old, and We're at like 100 million in annualized revenue already. We're, it's just, it's kind of shocking how fast this is growing.
Yeah.
And I think it's because people are kind of realizing they're not getting what they need from the healthcare system. And you get your personal health stack of what you should do, the insights, everything's evidence, backed by research and evidence in terms of our recommendations. We cover so much of what's going on in the body. We're adding these are all add-on tests you can do. We're looking at multi-cancer screening for cancer, which is amazing. Of the patients, the members that we, it's a membership model, so it's $4.99 a year. It's like $1.37 a day. Think about what you spend $1.37 a day on. And, of the people who added on the cancer test, 1 in 188 have found cancer, which is amazing because this saves their life. If you pick up cancer at an early stage with this, it's curable. But if you wait, by the time many of these cancers are found, it's often too late. And so, we're seeing, I think a 60% increase in cancer in people under 50. Colon cancer is exploding in the younger population, even 30-year-olds, and breast cancer. So we're helping people identify things, and we're also going to be doing deep dives into brain health and mood and Alzheimer's. You can do liquid biopsies now for cancer, but you can also do biomarkers for Alzheimer's and things like p-tau217 and 804240 and neurofilament light chain and other GFAP and other biomarkers that are emerging. So, what we're going to talk about this afternoon with Eric Burden and others is sort of how this whole field of biomarker research is exploding and how we're using AI to help synthesize and understand it and how we're going to be able to use that to, personalize your health and create precision medicine, but also precision health. And that's what to me is so exciting. So it's a pretty straightforward process, but I feel like we have the potential to really, be a disruptive force in healthcare, and what we're finding is that big corporations are starting to be interested, and eventually this will hopefully be covered by healthcare insurance. You can use your HSA for it now. You have it,
It does seem that there's two interesting parallels that are coming together. One is just all these more advanced tests that gives us the data that we never kind of were able to measure before. But then it's like you have all this data, but then the AI intelligence that can be built to see the overlaps and to assess what in all that data might be particularly pertinent for you.
Absolutely.
And it seems like those two things coming together at the same time really creates a new movement or a new chapter of where we're going in the health world.
There's 37 trillion chemical reactions in your body every second. Like, there's just no way for anybody, with a brain to do it. But, tech can do it. And I think that's what's so exciting to me is, I literally probably see thousands of biomarkers on my patients. I do extensive in-depth testing. And I've been able to sort of synthesize and sort through it, but it's taking me, 30 years to be able to sort of put that together and look at it and make sense of it and structure it in a way that, it helps the patient in the right order and organize it. And so we're now taking all that and training the model. So this is not like, data-driven AI, knowledge-driven AI are different. Data-driven AI is like a car. Like, it's just you put in the maps and the car does its thing, and it doesn't, it's just sort of agnostic. But, knowledge-driven AI is got to be informed by experts on how to do it. So if I asked, data-driven AI, please, end chronic disease, it would tell me how to do it. They'd say, we'll kill everybody over 10 years old. Not probably the best solution, but it works. It would. But we need to have knowledge experts informing the model, which is what we're doing.
Yeah, and so as you see this merging, what do you see some of the challenges are, or what do you see some of the there's definitely been huge progress.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, and we talked about this before, that there's, at least within the political realm, it feels like it used to be kind of a liberal thing to kind of be interested in your health and well-being, and now it doesn't seem that way. It seems like people from both sides of the aisle are like, wow, I'm now signing up to this system and becoming more aware of the things that actually create us to live unhealthy lives, particularly in the food we eat. So what is your vision for kind of where function health is going? Do you have a sense that this is just going to keep skyrocketing, and that the more that we can help people measure and better understand their well-being, we can kind of empower them versus waiting for the larger system to change?
I think, it's been well understood and accepted that health doesn't happen in the doctor's office, that 80% of what determines your health happens outside of the healthcare system. And yet we rely almost entirely on the healthcare system for our health, which doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And so function health is really about helping people fill that gap and become empowered with their own data to make the changes that will create health rather than just waiting till they have something then going to the doctor. And so I feel like function health could radically transform the healthcare system. It has that potential. I mean, there's a lot to do. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of obstacles. There's a lot of pushback. We have a whole sort of medical industrial, food industrial complex, which is very real, that's very organized, that's very methodical, that's very well funded, that drives enormous amounts of policy and shapes behavior in ways that are pretty harmful. I mean, we're the only country other than New Zealand that allows pharma advertising. Many other countries have banned food marketing to kids. We allow that. I mean, if another country was doing to our kids what we're doing, we'd go to war to protect them. I mean, it's frightening, but we allow our kids to, have all this crap. I mean, why is Lunchables okay for school lunches? It's not even actually food.
It's not food. You had mentioned this, if food is supposed to be regenerative and healthy, or like supposed to...
Well, just look up the Webster's definition for food, Webster's dictionary definition. It's something that supports the health and growth of an organism, or something like that. And most of what's consumed in America is not actually technically food. Ultra processed food is 60% of our diet, and so function, I think, can be that catalyst to start to get people to kind of wake up to what's happening with themselves, start to make the changes, and that will drive changes.
That's beautiful.
And people want different things, and it shifts the market, and it shifts what people put the dollars towards, and it changes people's behavior. And we had a guy come up to us. I was at a dinner with our team, and one of the investors, and this guy comes over the table. Oh, Dr. Hyman, I just don't tell you, I love function's great, and I got my results, and I had all these metabolic issues, and I followed the guidelines that were in the instructions in my dashboard, and I lost 20 pounds, and all my metabolic issues are gone, and I feel great.
Wow.
So
beautiful.
I think that's the kind of thing that we don't really. I hate to say it, I'm a doctor, but we don't really need doctors for treating most of the things that are wrong with us.
And so, in terms of well-being, what does a day in the life? We're almost at
me.
What does the day in the life of Mark look like?
What's my perfect day, or what is it?
Well,
What is it when I'm coming on a trip to San Francisco?
Well, when somebody ask me, like, do you cold plunge? And I say, my imagined self cold plunges every day. And I meditate for an hour, and I do all these other things. My
routine when I'm at home is pretty good. Even here, I worked out last night when I got here, but my routine at home is I wake up, I usually kind of do a short meditation. If I have a little extra time, I'll journal for 20 minutes, and then I have my coffee and journal, and then I'll work out. I've built this gorgeous gym in my house in Austin, so I'll do strength training and a little bit of cardio, sort of a mixed routine.
And a lot of resistance training, or just
I do, I definitely did not. I was a yoga teacher. I thought, oh, that yoga's good enough, and I run my bike, and I run. Right. When I was 59, I started to strength train. It's a game changer.
Great, good to know.
And then I have a sauna and a cold plunge. So I go 15 minutes of sauna, 3 minutes of cold plunge, and then I have my protein healthy aging shake and my supplements, and start my day.
Wow. Okay.
And
you get it all done. I mean, in the morning before you even start your day, you try to get all the pieces in.
a couple of hours. It's like before. So
it's
like
beautiful.
6:30 to 8:30, something like that.
Yeah.
And then I definitely also make time for friends.
Yeah.
Try to, get like at least 10 hugs a day. And
we should have no problem today.
Lots of cuddles. And I think community is the other thing here. I mean, I think I spent a lot of time in the blue zones when I was writing my book Young Forever, and it was really clear to me that part of the magic sauce there was sense of belonging, meaning, purpose, connection.
Yeah.
And so my friends and my friend group and my community is just so important to me.
Yeah, I saw there was a visit you made to Sardinia where you were meeting different people who were just like the social world of their life was so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a woman, Julia, she was like amazing. She goes, I'm 103 months, like I'm 5 3/4. I'm 103 months. And she was like still working, but she had no kids. But she's living with her niece and nephew who took her in. There's no nursing homes. She's still working and does her walks and hangs out with her friends, and she makes little doilies for weddings and stuff.
I saw there's some data recently about the difference of quality of life, both lifespan and health span of people, grandparents who spend a lot of time with their grandchildren.
Yeah.
I was like, that makes so much sense, just because they're so full of life and they're challenging your brain to work and your body to work. And I think that's such an interesting shift we've made from like, oh, I'm going to live and I'm going to retire and I'm just going to sit around and relax and not do anything. And so it's like, that's probably the last thing you want to do. Because you're telling your body, your brain, you don't really need, you're not needed anymore. And you're telling your body, you're not really needed anymore. And it feels like there's this beautiful kind of like insight of community, but also purpose.
Yeah.
When I look at you, like you have purpose-driven energy. Like
Too much, maybe.
Yeah, maybe a little bit much. But there's a lot of purpose that's driving through with you. And I see people who retire with a whole bunch of money and no purpose, and generally that is a hard existence.
Yeah.
You know, no community, no purpose, with lots of resources, and there's just kind of like the body isn't and the mind isn't stressed in a good way, and it feels like that's the balance we have to find, right? Which too much stress would definitely be unhealthy.
I mean, look, if we eliminated heart disease and cancer from the face of the planet, we'd extend life by 5 to 7 years. If you have meaning and purpose, you extend your life by 7 years.
Wow.
That's like
pretty
easy.
Pretty easy. Cool. Wonderful. So we're about out of time. Anything you want to close with before we move on to our next session?
No, I just really great to be here with you all. I'm so pleased you all showed up, because it would have been sad if nobody showed up. So thanks for coming. Hopefully make it interesting.
Just one thing. I have nothing against podcasts. I love podcasts. But one of the things I most like is to do this in community, because I feel like it creates a different field, and different things are said because there's other humans in the room.
Yeah. And
so going into a studio and doing this to me would be like from a 1 to 10 is like a 2. And then being with all of you and having this exploration is like 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
And so this is, I feel like, part of what I can contribute to is that the fact that we're all together, and your presence and our presence, and this kind of unfolding together. And again, we'll have more community connection and questions. It feels like we're doing this together versus there's one person who knows and they're telling people who don't know. And so to me, there's that field that we all create. And the fact that most of you, or almost all of you, are not looking at your phones, but you're actually with us energetically, I feel that energy. I think you feel that energy. Yeah. And then together that creates this kind of unified field, not to get too far out with everybody, but there's a unified field that's created, that's felt, that's palpable, and that field is in somewhat healing in its own self, right? Because then we remember that we are all connected, and we are all a part of life. And I feel like that to me is like one of the most like almost forgotten qualities that we've lost within our kind of social media TikTok world, where it's just like, wow, information's helpful, but information in community has a different feeling to it.
Yeah, so it's both funny and sad that we have a term for it now called IRL.
Yeah, right.
What's IRL?
Yeah, and the kids have a term for it. It's like, wow, humans being together is like, has to be like a thing, versus humans being together is like, of course, we're humans together. And in the blue zones, humans are just together. They're like, are you IRL? Or no, we're humans being together. Yeah. So.
Thanks, Soren.
Well, and thank you, Mark. Again, this is just the launch of our day. Thank you, everybody, for coming and for showing up with your presence. And we'll have a full day of learning and also introspection and exercises. So thank you so much for showing and being here with us.
Yes.
All right.